All right, man, peace. So, brothers, I caught a very interesting segment here on the CBS Morning News in which the panel, as well as a contributing psychotherapist, are going to attempt to explain to the best of their ability what they believe the psychological component is in what is called mass shootings here in America. And as we're going to see, especially for those of you brothers out there who pay attention and who've been on my channel for long enough, the people who contribute to this conversation are either being disingenuous or do not have the mental capacity or the cognitive function to be able to adequately discern and understand exactly why these things are going on. It's very obvious to me why we're seeing such a preponderance of quote unquote mass shootings, no matter the race, because what the super liberal mainstream media tries to do is act as if they're the friend to people of color, especially the man of color. That is not true, because if they were your friend, they would tell you the truth. That's why I state my channel is a pro-truth channel. It is not a quote-unquote pro-black channel. My channel is a pro-truth channel geared towards the so-called black man. If you pay close enough attention to the propaganda that is propagated on many of these mainstream news channels, they speak at the so-called black man. They don't speak to you. They do not respect you as a man or as an adult. That is why they spend most of their time trying to focus on saying if they can disenfranchise the quote-unquote mainstream white man of America and of Europe, because they view him as the threat, at least on the level of the masses. The elite level Caucasian man, as well as the elite level super liberal Caucasian Jewish man, those are the two entities that are establishing what the overall global culture is. So they're pretty much left alone. They're considered the quote-unquote enlightened ones. But the white male of the masses, that being from the level of white trash all the way up to upper middle class, they're trying to attack them, take them out of the home, and demonize them because they're viewed as a threat and the physical embodiment or representation of quote-unquote male hegemony. They're never going to be concerned about the so-called black man because, once again, they understand that they have him firmly under control through their proxy agent, that being the so-called black female. The black female's job is to imbue the young black boy with a feminine spirit so that by the time he understands what society is about, he's either dead, in prison, in jail, or caught up in the tentacles of another super liberal black female that he calls his girl, his wife, or his baby mama. It's the mainstream mid-level quote-unquote Caucasian male who's viewed as the standard of rulership here in society. Whenever the feminists speak, he is the person that they want to topple because, once again, they view the men of color as being firmly under control. So why am I saying all this? Once again, there were a bevy of mass shootings in between the time that I've last been able to publish a lot of videos up to now. And I just want to cover them to a certain degree because Donald Trump made a statement in the aftermath of some of those shootings in which he stated that it was clear to him that all of the men who were engaged in what they call quote unquote mass shootings, whether it was in Dayton, Ohio or El Paso, Texas, were suffering from psychiatric or psychological disorders. As usual, which the mainstream media loves to do, they castigated him for stating what he was stating, not because he was wrong, but just because it was him that said it. And that's why I always try to implore the so-called black man to view things with his brain and not his heart. Because if you view things with your heart, so many messages are going to go over your head and you're going to be rendered a servant, because that is all they view the so-called black man as. This society is circling the drain. So our eyes and our ears have to be wide open. We cannot get caught up in the okie doke. This next, what they call electoral process in 2020, is going to be filled with vitriol. I'll be covering it bit by bit, video by video, as it starts to ratchet up. But once again, just getting back to the topic of this video, it's very clear that America, or at least mainstream America, as well as the rest of quote unquote Western civilization, have decided that they don't care about their young men. It is intrinsic within the young man that he wants to have a wife and children to preside over. Now that those things have pretty much been taken away from him, and he's been relegated to being basically a bystander in his own household, a bystander in his own life as other people dictate to him how he's supposed to think and what he's supposed to do, that he's starting to lash out. Now, once again, as we witness the panel here try to converse on what they believe the psychological issues are within the minds of men that are leading them to lash out in this violent way, let's pay very close attention to the two-dimensional level of thought that they're trying to make three-dimensional. They want the woman to be the image of the answer. You understand that? The woman is never going to be the source of solutions or answers because that is not how her brain is configured to work. They are not solution-oriented creatures. As a matter of fact, they're problem-oriented. There's no disrespect, but the natural polarity of the woman is negativity. It just is. And unless there is a man there to create a framework, what we call reality, for her to dwell in, she's going to lose her mind. Right now, they're being propped up and allowed to act as if they can dispense answers and qualify exactly what it is that is going on in society according to their observations. That's why whenever you watch the CBS Morning News, they always have a female psychotherapist, because what that implies is that the woman understands the mental aspect of everyone in society, and they do not. Many of you brothers might have conversations with many of these liberal females, and you'll find that they love to take psychology classes in college. Why is that? It's because that amplifies the notion that they need to wear on their sleeve or on their chest that they know what everyone is thinking, that they know what everyone is going to do before they do it. And it's really just to mask the fact that the woman has no idea what the hell is going on. And when she's forced into a real three-dimensional conversation, you're going to see that they're the ones who need the answers. They need to have the answers provided to them. Men and women have been switcherooed in this society, and both parties are losing their minds because of it. Now, in all reality, we know that many of these mass shooters, at least if you're paying attention, are what they call sleeper agents or Manchurian candidates. I'll be covering that most likely in the epilogue of this video. But I just want us to pay very close attention to how they attempt to describe what the possible issues are that are plaguing some of these young men in society, and they really don't have any idea, either because they're not smart enough to deduce it, or just because, once again, they're lying for the sake of their mass broadcast. So anyway, they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Well, we're going to switch gears just a little bit, actually stick with the shootings. New research shows mass shooters have a lot in common. The findings could be used to help prevent future attacks. The Violence Project has studied every U.S. mass shooting since 1966. Its database, which is not publicly available yet, includes 160 mass shooters who have killed 4 or more people in a public place. Nearly all were male, and the average age was 34 years old.
Yes, I believe it that nearly all of the perpetrators were male, because it is the male, for the most part, who has been disenfranchised in this society, or who has allowed himself to be disenfranchised in this society. Once again, so-called black man, we have to put a firm grasp on the things that are important, the things that are tangible, that we can hold on to, that are actually ours. What it is that we're able to create that is our own. What actually matters, that being the Most High, and in the flesh, our creation. We have to make sure that we preside over those things. It is in the essential nature of a man to preside over. That's where we get the term president from. When you're a president, you preside. So the man, by his essential nature, wants to rule. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, in this modern day time period, what little girls and little boys are being taught is that they're both equal. They're both receiving the same education. And that is for the sole intent to desexualize both entities. Both little boys and little girls are being desexualized or being asexualized. That is the source of all of the confusion. That is why we see so many females now are on antidepressants, and they're afraid to admit it. They're strung out on wine, antidepressants, and sex toys. Young males in this society are joining these groups like IPMOR and Incel and MGTOW. It's very clear that there is a massive psychological issue in America because of the ideologies that are being taught, but no one wants to confront it, because that would mean that females are going to have to return to a state that they would rather die than return to, that being the consort or the helpmeet of a man. The woman brings great joy and happiness to a man when she understands her place and knows her role. That encourages the man to do what he needs to do, because now he is incentivized. So many of these younger males here in America have been decentivized. They have no one to preside over. They're not receiving the love that they deserve from the female. That's the reason why the female was put on the earth. A lot of people are not going to like this, but the woman was put on the earth to be a helpmeet to a man. That's it. That's why everything that the woman does is in mimicry of men. There's literally nothing that women do that is independent of what men do outside of biological functions. Everything that they seek to do, Whether it's become president or governor or mayor, it's just because they saw a man do it, because the man is the head. He is the original. He always has been, and he always will be. And by no means is that to try to speak down on or denigrate the woman. The woman is essential. She's beautiful. She's wonderful when she's in her right mind. But feminism has drawn the woman out of her right mind. Now, another major component of the woman that brothers are going to have to understand is her love of chaos. The woman is always going to seek after chaos and disorder, i.e., to appeal to her negative polarity. The natural polarity of the woman is negative. The natural polarity of the man is positive, meaning what? Constructive. The woman by nature is destructive. They just are. A lot of people are not going to like this. It's okay. But that's the reason why we're seeing all of these perpetrators engaging in many of these shootings. Once again, a lot of the major shootings that we're seeing are done by Manchurian candidates. But there are shootings occurring every day that no one knows about. And it's because the man has had his woman, his wife, taken away from him, taken out of his household. Now he has too much idle time. I cited this scripture in another video, but for those of you brothers who have a King James 1611 Bible, in Ecclesiasticus chapter 36 verse 25, it states, "Where no hedge is, there the possession is spoiled, and he that hath no wife will wander up and down mourning." Never underestimate the power that the woman has and her major function in the life of a man. They bring great happiness to a man. That's why the Most High said what? It's not good that the man dwell alone. This society has taken the woman out of the family. It's made her think that she can dominate over the man. Why is that? Because the government now is the new husband and father. So that is why a lot of these young men are going crazy. Do not take my word for it. Look up how many of these groups are starting to become radicalized. The incel groups, things of that nature. It's all because of their perceived inability to have a functional relationship with a woman. And this society does not care because they've placed the woman as the head of the man.
Study found most shooters shared common traits like experiencing childhood trauma. The researchers also learned these shootings are socially contagious. Psychologist Jillian Peterson is co-founder.
I think that we'll find that most things are socially contagious.
Violence Project. Its findings will be published later in a book, and she joins us now. Jillian, good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Let me start with this idea of childhood trauma, because people hear that right away and say, red flag, red flag. What did you find out, though, about childhood trauma?
Once again, it's so interesting that the CBS Morning News decided that they were going to address the notion or the sentiment of mass shootings from the psychological perspective. When Donald Trump made that same assertion, the mainstream liberal media called him crazy. They call him dismissive because what they're trying to do is demonize gun ownership. They need to take your guns so that once your guns have been taken away, you'll be defenseless for many of the things that they have planned for the masses of people in Western civilization, which is what? The forced acceptance of pansexuality, the forced acceptance of gender neutrality, the forced acceptance of the veneration of the goat god, etc. You will start to see those things in broad daylight if they have the opportunity to take guns away from the quote-unquote American citizens, or American debt slaves, more aptly stated.
These mass shooters.
So we found that it's really a slow build over time. So you do see intense childhood trauma, things like parental suicide, serious physical and sexual abuse, heavy bullying, but then that builds over time. You add in mental.
These are also the core components of designing a monarch child, or a Manchurian candidate, or a potential sleeper agent or sleeper assassin, someone who's under mind control. These are very, very key aspects of creating the divisions within the mind of the child so that they can be programmed.
Concerns, you add in a real crisis point and then access to this script for this form of violence and the means to carry it out.
Note that the quote-unquote psychologists use the term script.
So we do see these common factors, but of course the majority of people who experience childhood trauma, this is not how it turns out.
Nearly every mass shooter that you studied suffered an identifiable crisis, you say, before the shooting.
Yeah, and that's something we've been really interested in terms of prevention. So in the days, weeks, or months before the shooting, there's a marked change in behavior, and it's typically a suicidal crisis. So
sometimes, or they've just been activated by their handler.
about 80% we could identify were actively suicidal before they did this.
And hey, for you brothers out there who are interested in the topic, check out the new series. I believe it's on USA. One of those channels, either USA or TBS or TNT. One of those 3 channels. There's a new TV show called Treadstone, which is based on the mind control program of the U.S. government that was able to, of course, program Jason Bourne from the very infamous Bourne Identity series of films that was starring Matt Damon. Check that series out. Very informative.
And these really are suicides in essence. They're horrific, but the shooter typically dies. And so that change in behavior, people leak their plans. 78% leaked their plans ahead of time, so people knew.
So 8 out of...
Yes, many of them, quote unquote, leaked their plans or left their script to be read to the masses of people so that the masses of people will be made to believe that many of these men were actually suffering from psychological disorders, when in fact many of them were just Manchurian candidates. But just to get back to the topic of this video, there are a lot of young men who are suffering in this society from a sense of forced isolation. So-called black men, when you deal with these women, you have to understand their mind state. The woman in this society is raised to be confrontational. She's raised to be a rival of yours. She's not raised to be a complement of yours. She's raised to be your competition. That's why they view everything from the standpoint or from the perspective of war or strength. You ever hear what they state when they speak about a man? When their relationship fails, they'll say things like, he wasn't quote unquote strong enough to be with me, or he wasn't tough enough to be with me. They view a relationship like a contest, like a competition, or like some type of sporting event or a boxing match. You have to grasp these things so that you understand the type of woman that you want to be with as opposed to the type of woman that you should avoid. Because there are decent women out here. I mean, they're hiding out somewhere with the abominable snowman and Bigfoot in them, but they're out here. So you just have to understand that we have to focus on ourselves and having our own shit together so that we're an asset to ourselves. If we're not an asset to ourselves, we cannot be an asset to anyone else. And the woman views everything simply as an asset. Bottom line, I don't care about what they speak about, the love bullshit. The woman is a narcissist. She needs to have a certain amount of attention lavished upon her. Really, they need to be worshipped. So that's something else that you have to watch out for. But I'll be covering the notion of narcissism very soon in another video.
Gave a warning in effect.
Yes, a very clear warning. And so we can train people to be thinking about those signs of a crisis and to also not only recognize them, but know what to do with those warning signs, know who to report to, know what intervention strategies are in place in their...
So in other words, you really have no solution. You're just trying to provide some fail-safes. As usual, you guys have no solutions. And when I say as usual, I'm not just talking about women. I'm talking about most of these psychologists / psychotherapists. They don't have any real solutions because many of them are programmers or handlers themselves. It's not their job to figure out how to stop these phenomena. It's their job to go on television and just demonize the demographic that they want to demonize, that being young men, especially, as I've already stated, the so-called young Caucasian man. Because once again, so-called black men, they view you as being done. They view the so-called black man as being D-U-N-N-N-N-N, done. Okay? And please, don't some brother jump in the comment section about, brother, you spelled done wrong. I know what I'm doing, okay? I'm spelling it that way for effect. They view the so-called black man as being done. You are not viewed as a threat in this society. They actually like exactly where they have you. Under your woman and feeling like you have to be a criminal. Because please understand that the prison industrial complex is a multi-billion-dollar business for this government. So they don't care if you decide to commit crimes, so-called black man. They don't care. That's why I state that we have to outthink a lot of the stumbling blocks that have been set up against us and not just relegate ourselves to what they want us to be. And we have to understand and peep game from every angle and every perspective.
Places or their schools or their churches, that's something we're really thinking about in terms of prevention.
You've also researched mass shooters, 200 mass shooters who did not successfully follow through with their plan, thankfully. What did you take away from that, and what else can people, who are watching this program learn from, again, that idea of attempting to do something but they were not able to? And I think it also probably speaks to those who stepped forward and they have said something.
Yeah, you do find a lot of stories of people who were thinking about doing this, were in a really dark place, had seen others do this, were getting radicalized online, were gathering weapons, but someone stepped in. And what is kind of inspiring is oftentimes it actually doesn't take that much to...
Of course it doesn't, because most people really don't want to kill themselves. Most people just want to have someone who understands them. We live in a world, man, where everyone is trying to fit in. So if you're not someone who's trying to find a niche to fit into, you have to be very mentally strong. Very mentally strong. You have to know who you are, because most people are sheep. That's the bottom line of it. Most people are sheep. So you have to be unafraid to be who you are, and that's from a very young age. So hopefully you have strong-minded parents who can teach you why you're supposed to love yourself and what makes you worth loving. That's the most important thing, man, because if you don't have that, you're going to end up drifting off into one of these groups. You become a gang member, or you start to commit crimes because you think that that's going to build your cred or your respect from a female that you want attention from, or from dudes that you want to roll with. Most of those people never received the opportunity to find out who they really were as people. And even with a lot of these little white boys out here bugging out of their fucking mind, becoming incel and all that other shit, they're being plagued by the same shit. And the real issue, once again, is feminism. A lot of people are not going to like this, but the woman is put on the earth to be a wife to a man. There's nothing wrong with quote-unquote arranged marriages. Once again, I'm sure people are going to be very upset. Oh well. We live in a society where 70% of marriages are ending in divorce. Why is that? Because people are getting married for the wrong reason. Right now, the man and the woman have basically become roommates with just different genitalia. Nobody has a role or a purpose anymore. That's why the shit is not working. And then on top of that, you have this monogamy paradigm where we're taught that a man is only supposed to have one woman. That's nonsense. A man can have more than one woman as long as it's in order. But this is a disorderly, disharmonious society. And that's why everybody's fucked up in their damn head, man.
Someone through that crisis point. Certainly long-term intervention takes a lot, but just getting someone through that moment, it can just be someone stepping in and saying, are you okay? Yeah. Let's reach out.
Is there an easy way, though, you think about?
There's nothing in life that's easy that's of anything of relevance.
When it's somebody just spouting out anger, venting, maybe just having an angrier side, and when it is something that you need to step in on?
You don't know.
I think maybe along the time where people start acquiring AR-15s. Maybe that's when it's the time to start taking shit seriously. I don't know.
Are there signs that are different? Anything that people can draw on?
Not necessarily, but...
Once again, maybe the acquisition of grenades, AR-15s, and long black trench coats.
We're thinking is crisis intervention, de-escalation, suicide prevention. Those are skills that are going to be helpful in many situations. If someone's just angry, if someone is feeling suicidal, if someone...
Once again, brothers, narcissism is a major component of this whole thing because people are taught to worship themselves in this society. No one has a respect for the creator. Everyone is taught that they're supposed to be their own God and be able to answer all of their own questions. So when they reach a crossroads in their life that is impactful upon them or makes them want to get down on their knees and crumble, who do they turn to? Because they do not have an understanding of the Most High. I'm talking to you so-called black men. All right? That's what I'm talking to. A lot of black men, and I give brothers credit, very strong, because despite what we go through, the so-called black man is not going to run out here and try to kill himself, at least not too much, even though we're starting to see more of that. But that's why I tell brothers to get out of that corporate workforce, that corporate workspace, if you can. Have your mind focused on having your own thing that will put you in the mindset of a boss and of a leader and of a sovereign. That's where our minds are supposed to be. Not running around trying to beg the so-called white man for a job, begging the black woman for a place to stay in exchange for some dick, sleeping on her couch, begging her for food. That's never going to build any type of self-respect or respect from others. These are the issues that lead to problems and criminality down the line. And as I've already stated, this mass shooter thing is not just a white boy thing. It's predominantly their issue, But there have been a lot of so-called black mass shooters as well. I've covered them on this channel, especially in the workplace. If you pay very close attention, most of the black male mass shooters are in the workplace. Most of these white male mass shooters, they just indiscriminately pick people. They get into a big crowd, they just start mowing people down. Either way, people are still getting killed. But it pays to pay attention to where these events are happening, because it tells you who they have their anger aimed at. The so-called black man is very upset at his workplace. That's why we need to leave those environments.
Just going through a hard time, not only a mass shooting, it'll be helpful in general, but we also think it would help in terms of mass violence.
Two of the more alarming words in your report are the socially contagious words.
Yeah.
That, I mean, we've seen that it would appear this past weekend. We've actually.
Well, here's the problem. When you use the term socially contagious, what you're implying is a virus. We have to nip the virus in the bud at the source. We can't just view the virus as something that has to be contained. Once again, the issue is, what is causing these problems? What is causing the amount of enmity and antipathy that so many young men of various races here in America have for this society? It's very clear when we analyze it from a very basic level. Is that they're upset that they've had their woman and or women taken away from them.
3 incidents in 4 or 5 days.
Yeah.
Once again, like the scripture I cited in Ecclesiasticus 36 and 25. When you take a man's woman away from him, he will go up and down the street in mourning.
These trigger other attacks, don't they?
They do. So we did find that these are socially contagious. Perpetrators study other perpetrators, and when one happens, the most concerning period of time is the week after, because there tends to be more.
Yeah.
People read about.
Well, the mass shooting pertaining to Connor Betts in Dayton, Ohio, and Patrick Cruz's, or allegedly Patrick Cruz's, in El Paso, Texas, those were clearly rituals for the Lugnasad. The Lugnasad, for those of you who don't know, was the Celtic celebration. It was the Celtic summer celebration for Baal, or the sun god. Lugna is just another term for Lucifer, or the light bearer, or the shining one per se. Another name for the shining one is Kronos, or Shiva.
Line, they see the notoriety that people get. They watch these manifestos get spread.
John Miller with the New York Police Department, who was here yesterday, said it's not people who suddenly plan an attack. It's people who've been thinking about it who suddenly decide now's the time to do it.
Exactly. Yes, who become inspired, if you will, by seeing another one play out.
What sort of systems should schools, churches have in place to try and have a system where people feel comfortable reporting it, whether it is something major or minor, but just so there's a place where this information is going, whether, to build a profile of someone who people need to sort of be on the lookout for?
Well, I have news for you, miss. There's only so much reporting that you're going to be able to do. The scriptures tell us in the book of Job that terror shall make people afraid on every side. That's going to start to happen more and more as the overall tone of this society starts to lean more towards Luciferianism, i.e. the promotion of chaos. You cannot get an inordinate amount of freedoms, which is what the woman has in this society. She has an inordinate amount of freedoms, and then not expect for there to be some type of backlash. Females out here are just doing whatever they feel like doing at the moment. They'll say whatever, do whatever from day to day, as will many of these simps, i.e. females trapped in male bodies. And it's starting to ratchet up and escalate the amount of quote-unquote terror attacks. As we can see here, it states what? Terror in America, right next to the young black female reporter. So they understand what's going on here.
We in schools have been talking about care teams. So rather than threat assessment teams, which feels like, someone's a threat and I need to report it and they're going to get in trouble and the police are going to get called. And I think people get scared to report things because they don't want to get people in trouble, get them fired. But if we can report to a group of people who know resources and can connect people and approach it in a different way, saying,
let me also say this. Many people in the workplace need to be trained on how not to be toxic. As I've already stated, the corporate America workspace is like high school 2.0. And you have people who believe that they can try to provoke others, and if they get the provocation that they want, which is the person to lash out or act out oh, I got them now I'm going to report them. That's very dangerous. Many people in the workplace today are not professional or are overly judgmental. Your job is to do your job. Your job is not to see if you could take some type of census of who in the workplace has a personality type that can vibe with yours. That's not what you're there for. So there are a lot of issues going on in quote unquote American culture today. But once again, we're not hearing any real solutions from these people because they don't have the mental capacity to evaluate what the source of many of these problems are.
Okay, what can we do to help you? That gives it a different flavor, and I think people will be more likely to reach out.
Jillian, you mentioned mental illness, and President Trump made a point of mentioning mental illness.
Yes, he did. And when he did that, so many members of the mainstream liberal media got upset with him because they were more focused on why he was not willing to just take away people's guns. Anyone with half a brain knows that if you try to take away the guns, especially of them white boys in middle America, there's going to be another civil war. These little pea-brain liberal women on the East Coast and the West Coast who think that the world revolves around them, they might not understand that. But those of us who pay attention, we know that.
Yesterday, how significant a role does mental illness play in this?
So you do find mental health concerns, certainly, in the vast majority of mass shooters. But it's important that mental illness and violence, you're not more likely to commit violence if you're mentally ill. You're actually less likely to commit violence if you have a mental illness. You're more likely to be...
Well, that depends on what you describe or what you associate with mental illness or what you call a mental illness.
Victim. What we see is these are complicated pathways, and
in other words, you don't understand what's going on. You have no idea what's going on.
Trauma and mental health and bullying and other stress factors, and you see this slow build over time. They're complex pathways, so picking out any one piece doesn't work.
One of the stress factors that...
Well, the main piece is that at least a lot of the mass shootings that get publicized are Manchurian candidates. They're sleeper cells. Connor Betts, he claimed himself to hear voices, see shapes in shadows, and he believed that he suffered from schizophrenia. But I'll be covering a lot of that in the epilogue.
Also mentioned is video games. Is that a real factor?
You know, we did code video games, and we are looking at that. It's a bigger factor in the younger school shooters, but it's not the majority, or it's not an overwhelming sort of piece that we're seeing.
It's when you say it's a bigger factor among them, it's what contribution, if anything, does it make?
So again, I think it's one piece of...
Keep in mind that video games are used for combat training in the U.S. military and in most military forces now, because that's the easiest way to acclimate the mind of the soldier to what they're going to be experiencing in combat.
Hustle, right? So we have, you know, there's some case studies where you see someone who's been in a lot of first-person violent video games, and they kind of take that into the shooting. It's sort of that script for violence, right? You're practicing that. Once
again, she uses the word script. A lot of these on-air or on television psychotherapists, they're in the know on exactly who these people are. They're just Manchurian candidates, man. That's all they are. Or sleeper assassins per se. Provocateurs, agents of chaos. And when I say agents of chaos, I mean literally, whose job it is to provoke this type of discussion in the mainstream media, hoping to come to the already prescribed answer, that being to take everybody's guns away.
And so it becomes more normalized.
Some very interesting information there, Jillian Peterson. Thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Jillian Peterson, because you provided a backdrop for me to speak on this issue right here. Once again, brothers, we have to understand what to prioritize. Carnal things, they can be nice, but they're never going to last, okay? I don't care what they are. Our parents, we love them. One day they're going to go back to the dust from which they came. The lady that you're with, she could wake up tomorrow morning and decide she doesn't want to be with you. You can go to work tomorrow and they can give you walking papers. That's just life. We have to prioritize things and make sure that we understand what exactly is the reason why we're here and who we have to show the utmost loyalty and fidelity to, that being the Most High, because that is the only thing that is never going to change. Everything else is going to change. So a lot of these guys, they lose it because they get caught up in the spirit of the woman. You can never, ever, ever give your spirit over to anything carnal, or fleshly. Definitely not a woman. The average woman is a functioning nut job. Okay? I speak the real on here because I know that a lot of guys out here don't have anyone who's going to speak the real to them, especially a lot of you so-called black men. I keep saying this, but that's who my channel is geared towards. I really don't give a shit about a lot of other things, because whenever you look at a lot of these statistics, at the very bottom of every good status, who? The so-called black man. So it's nothing personal when I say that. It's just I know where my priorities lie. We have to focus on things to elevate us and mentally and spiritually prepare us for what's to come. And when we see things like this, preventing future attacks, they're trying to demonize any form of male strength. They want everyone to become a simp or someone who's going to kowtow to female sensibilities, because they're moving everything towards the veneration, the worship of the mother goddess and her son, the quote-unquote divine child or the divine hermaphrodite. And behind the curtain, they worship the horned god, that being the goat-headed god or the bull-headed god, whatever you want to call him, Khnum or Benebdejet or Amun or Baal or Kronos or Shiva. They all wore the horns, right? Cernunnos, etc. But anyway, peace.